I was right. Now, I normally don't do this sort of thing, but I really want to talk about this a little bit more in depth, and it all stemmed from a tweet that came out last year, April 25th, 2023. Now, I put out this tweet, and basically, this is what it says. NXT, since it's developmental, should be treated like free agency. If you don't get drafted to Raw or SmackDown, then you go to NXT. Call-ups should be treated as free agent signings. Adam Pearce needs to be exclusive to Raw, and someone else needs to be the equivalent on SmackDown. We don't need on-screen GMs, but we do need authority figures on TV once in a while to justify decisions being made. GMs shouldn't be the main character, but a supporting character to tie up loose ends in storylines. Thoughts? Now, interestingly enough, this tweet did 753,000 views, and if you guys take a look at it, there was a lot of people who were kind of mixed signals. A lot of people enjoyed this, a lot of people didn't. One person who didn't like it was Idris Enofe from NXT, and that is actually his real account. So he didn't like that idea. Well, it's really funny because it's 2024 and the idea is literally being presented in front of our eyes. And I actually think I was 100% correct in the sense of what I spoke about, because for WWE, for a very, very long time, especially under the Vince McMahon regime, things just simply didn't make sense. Things would happen on TV, and for one storyline, everything would be logical, and then everything else that happened on TV was like literally just thrown on TV without any sort of direction, any sort of logic being applied to it. And one of the easiest ways to fix something like that is by having authority figures. Obviously, Adam Pearce and Nick Aldis have been freaking awesome. Like, I have been very, very vocal about how good these two gentlemen are in their roles. And there's a couple of reasons for this, but one of the best examples is actually Braun Breaker, right? Braun Breaker gets drafted to Raw, and this is a guy who is really pissed about not being in the King of the Ring tournament. Like, the King of the Ring tournament has been over with now, and he is still upset about this. And he's taking his anger out on a lot of people. And he's taking his anger out on Ricochet. And now it's leading to a match with Ilya Dragunov. But the thing that I love so much about this is that, one, it's a very logical reason for Braun Breaker to be upset. This guy created so many amazing moments in NXT as the NXT champion, comes to SmackDown because he chose to sign with Nick Aldis. And instead, he gets drafted to Raw, and he doesn't feel that same level of respect from Adam Pearce the same way he felt the respect from Nick Aldis. And now this is a guy who is a heel, taking it out on the authority figure, taking it out on the talent. But what I love so much about this and having the authority figures on TV is not only does it make logical sense, but Adam Pearce and Nick Aldis are there just simply to support the storylines, right? They are there making sense of the things that are currently happening on TV. And that was my point of everything, right? So right now, if a talent gets called up to Raw or SmackDown, they are a free agent signing, right? We know this. But if WWE has a GM that drafts somebody and this person is going apeshit crazy on everybody, obviously that starts to create some tension between the GM and, of course, the talent. But what is that actually doing? It's not putting Adam Pearce above everyone else. What it's really doing is putting a significant amount of energy and a sort of like this attention that goes to Braun Breaker now. So when Braun Breaker does this and he has issues with somebody, it just makes a lot of sense because it's helping Braun Breaker actually look good. Another good example of why authority figures actually matter. There have been times where talent have come up to a GM and they've requested a match, right? Because something happened earlier in the night. The GM says, hey, no problem, I can make this happen. There you go, right? Or how about AJ Styles going up to Nick Aldis and basically saying, hey, man, like, I want to address the crowd. Got to get some stuff off my chest. I'm asking you if I could have a little bit of time tonight on the show, right? AJ Styles does that. Nick Aldis says yes. Now we're getting a reason as to why Nick Aldis is allowing this to happen. And obviously, Nick Aldis is going to have a little bit of regret because, quite frankly, his top babyface champion was just taken out by AJ Styles, who basically bluffed him out. So my point that I'm making is with the GMs, they had a lot of logic where gaps needed to be filled. But let's just talk about the overall system and the way that this works. Kiana James beats Natalya on Monday Night Raw. Okay, this is a perfect example. Kiana James beats Natalya on Raw. On the same token, WWE Raw has multiple women's matches. Adam Pearce, as a general manager, has been in backstage segments with Kiana James for weeks prior. And it may only be like 5-10 seconds worth, but it's WWE just subtly putting an opportunity on TV to say, hey, this is somebody that we care about, but we don't really have something for them on TV right now. So when Kiana James was appearing on TV before, maybe people didn't know who she was. Maybe people weren't watching NXT. But the point is, she was having those little backstage moments with Adam Pearce, and now it leads to her having a match with Natalya, which, by the way, WWE has her defeat Natalya. So this is WWE just very subtly telling you, hey, this is somebody to pay attention to. Another great example of why authority figures are so incredibly important, I think it really goes back down to the whole situation with Randy Orton and Nick Aldis months ago, right? There was that time where Nick Aldis fined Randy Orton. Randy Orton comes backstage and he sends him a check for $100,000 or whatever because he says, hey, this is going to cover the next one as well. It's these small little moments where having a GM there basically gets to emphasize whatever the story is or whatever the purpose of something is. I think that's what wrestling needs. I don't want these guys to have authority figure storylines where they are front and center and they're taken away from others, but I want them to be there to be the supporting cast that helps the talent. And trust me, there's a million other examples of how I could go about this, but it really stems from the draft, right? Even in the draft this year, like there was a little bit more of a methodical approach in how they conducted the draft this year. And that's why it led to something so cool with Braun Breaker, who, by the way, I've always been concerned, like, how is this guy going to be on the main roster? He's great in NXT, but how is he going to be on the main roster? That's always a big question. By having Adam Pearce and Nick Aldis there, it makes things a big deal. I always go back to the way Jade Cargill was presented on TV, talking to Nick Aldis. She didn't have to say much. She didn't have to do much, but just her being there talking to him presented it as a big deal. So yes, guys, I was right. And I understand that maybe everybody at the time felt like it didn't make sense, but now people are seeing it on TV, and I think a lot of people do make a lot of, like, I think a lot of people love it. I think a lot of people love it. I always go back to an example with Chelsea Green and Adam Pearce, right? She's annoying. She's a Karen. Adam Pearce actually has a personality. I need a drink. Like, these are the small things that I'm talking about when you add it to TV. Like, when he does something like that, it makes Chelsea Green even more annoying. So it's perfect. It's literally perfect. And the cool thing is, with the way NXT talent have actually been presented on the main roster, the system with the draft and the free agents and stuff like that, I feel like have actually been really good. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But I think it's really, really improved the product. And I think long-term, there's just going to be a lot of success with it. So it's not very often I do this, but ladies and gentlemen, I was right.